Welcome to a Legendarium special about Georges Méliès, a pioneer of early films. Georges Méliès was born in Paris in 1861 to a family which owned and operated a shoe factory on Boulevard Saint-Martin. Though he enjoyed a classical education, Georges' artistic interests grew over his academic ones. He made cardboard puppets at age 10 and scribbled caricatures of his teachers into his school notebooks during class. As a young man studying in London, he became fascinated with stage magic, often visiting the Egyptian Hall run by the famous stage magician Robert Neville Mascaline. He began practicing tricks himself, and George eventually started performing in public upon his return to Paris in 1885. At least until George's father pressured him to rejoin the family business. Yet George's passion led him often to the theater Robert Houdin, founded by the famous stage magician John Eugene Robert Houdin. He also took magic lessons and performed at the Cabinet Fantastique of the Musée Grévin. After his father retired in 1888, George sold his share of the family business to his two brothers and bought his beloved theater Robert Houdin, where not only he performed magic for the masses, but allowed other magicians to perform as well. In time, his background in stage magic and the stage craft needed to make it happen, or at least appear to happen, led George into the modern magic of cinema. On December 28, 1895, he attended the first public screenings of 10 short films by the Lumiere brothers. They used a cinematograph device that recorded, developed, and projected motion pictures. These early films ranged from 38 to 49 seconds, often capturing realistic moving images such as their first film, Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory. Georges Méliès wanted desperately to be part of this new wonder and approached the brothers after the show, offering to buy one of their devices. Unfazed by the brothers' refusal of his offer of 10,000 francs, Méliès went to London. There he bought an animatograph film projector from Robert Paul for 1,000 francs and re-engineered it himself, turning it into a film camera. By 1896, he made his own short films, and the next year, Méliès built a glass studio in the vegetable garden of his house in Montreal-sous-Bois, where he elaborated his productions and trick work. A nearby shed served as a changing room for his actors. Though great inventors, the Lumiere brothers tended to show simple shots without a real story. Méliès extended his films to cover 10 to 20 minutes and told a proper story. He invented the basics of modern special effects. He also created the first double exposure to create a translucent and ghostly image in the 1898 film The Cave of Demons. Secondly, he created the first split screen, with performers acting opposite themselves in another 1898 film, Four Heads Are Better Than One. He also created the first dissolve in the 1899 film Cinderella. Méliès even added color to many of his films, hand-painting each frame. Curiously, it never occurred to him to move the camera for close-ups or long shots. His 1902 silent film, Le Voyage dans la Lune, or Voyage to the Moon, is his most famous work and is believed to be the first science fiction movie. Inspired by Jules Verne's novel From the Earth to the Moon, the film follows a group of astronomers who travel to the moon in a cannon-propelled capsule. There they explore the moon's surface and are forced to escape from an underground group of moon men. They return with a splashdown to Earth, a captive moon man on board. The rocket hitting the moon in the eye is an iconic moment in the history of cinema. Méliès made over 500 more films, acting, financing, directing, photographing, and designing the stage and costume for each one. Often his wife starred in them alongside George. His films became roaring successes around the world, inspiring many to copy his style and sometimes pirate his movies. To protect his work, George sent his younger brother Gaston to set up shop in the United States to protect his copyrights and distribute his films to the American market. In time, Gaston himself began making his own films under George's Star Films banner. First based in New Jersey, Gaston relocated to San Antonio, where he started making westerns and changed the company's branch name to American West. In the end, it would not be copyrights but World War I that doomed the first great filmmaker and producer. By 1915, the French government ordered Méliès to turn his studio into a hospital for wounded soldiers taken from the trenches. The movie-going public, overwhelmed and impoverished by the horror of war, lost interest in fantasy films, which dried up his revenue. The French government also confiscated 400 original prints made by Star Films and melted them down to recover silver and celluloid for manufacturing army boots. Méliès himself, consumed by rage and despair, burned many of his negatives, sets, and costumes. The penniless Méliès then ran a tiny sweet and toy shop in Gare de Montparnasse train station for many years to make ends meet. By the time the war ended, big studios entered production, leaving little room for small filmmakers. In the late 1920s, his immense contribution to cinema started to be recognized again, and he received the Legion of Honor. Yet Georges Méliès still lived in abject poverty until the year 1932, when the French Cinema Society put him up in a retirement home for veterans. He expressed profound gratitude for this, noting that he no longer had to broil during the summer and freeze during the winter to support himself and his wife. He died in 1938, leaving an awesome legacy behind despite his sometimes unhappy life. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.